Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. We are going to
Mhm.
be diving into some really interesting stuff today.
Yeah.
And that is relationships, but more specifically,
You're
faith-based relationships in marriage, and how that can impact not only like your marriage,
right.
but even how you date.
Hmm.
And I am really excited to dig into this with you today.
Yeah, this is gonna be really fascinating. I mean, this is stuff that's really relevant. I think everyone is
Yeah.
interested in this topic in some way.
Absolutely. I
Mm.
mean, who doesn't want a strong, lasting relationship?
Right.
And the source material we're looking at today is really all about putting faith
Yeah.
at the center. And I think that's what makes this so intriguing, because sometimes when we hear about faith and relationships, it can sound kind of like a bunch of rules,
Yeah.
right? Don't do this, don't do that. But what I love about this source is that it's not about that at all. It's about
Right.
how putting faith first
Mhm.
can actually lead to a deeper, more fulfilling relationship.
It's like it's a countercultural message in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because the world is telling you, look out for number one
Yeah.
and do what feels good in the moment. And what we see in the source material is it's completely opposite.
Totally. And that brings me to the first thing that really jumped out at me, this concept of marriage as a covenant,
Right.
not just a contract. What does that even mean? Like, break that down for us.
Well, yeah, so much of what we see in the world today is this emphasis on the individual, on the me.
Right.
And that even bleeds over into how people approach marriage. It becomes very contractual.
So it's like, what am I getting out of this deal?
Exactly. What are my rights? What are my benefits? And if those things aren't there, I'm out.
Right. Whereas a covenant is more about like
Yeah.
a sacred promise that you're
Yeah.
making before God.
It's about us, right? It's about this bond that you create together that's meant to be unbreakable,
And that you're choosing
So-
to commit to no matter what.
no matter what. For better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health.
Right. And I think that's where the faith element comes in,
Yeah.
because it's like you're not just making this promise to each other,
Yeah.
you're also making it before God,
Absolutely.
which adds a whole nother level of weightiness to it, don't you think?
Absolutely. There's accountability there. And I think when you bring God into the picture,
Yeah.
it changes everything because it's not just about your feelings in the moment. It's about something much bigger than yourselves.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes how marriage, in a biblical sense, is supposed to reflect
Right.
the relationship between Christ and the church.
Right. Which is just mind-blowing when you really think about it. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
unconditional love, sacrifice, putting the needs of the other above your own.
Wow. That's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
Like, how can anyone actually live up to that?
Well, and the source acknowledges that. It doesn't shy away from the fact that we're all human, we all make mistakes, but it's the intentionality, right? It's striving for that ideal, even though we know we'll never be perfect.
So it's less about being perfect
Right.
and more about the journey of growing together
Yeah.
and relying on God's grace
Yeah.
to get through those tough times.
Exactly. Because grace is what makes it possible to love imperfectly.
Absolutely.
Because let's face it, we all need a lot of grace.
Yeah. We do.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get practical here for a minute. What does this actually look like in
Oh, I know.
everyday life?
Right.
The source talks about specific roles for husbands and wives.
Yes.
And I have to admit that makes me a little nervous. 'Cause it sounds kind of old-fashioned,
I understand why you'd say that. I think anytime we hear about roles in marriage, our minds can kind of jump to these outdated stereotypes.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to look beyond the surface here. What the source is really getting at is
Yeah.
the unique strengths that each partner brings to the relationship.
It's not about like who's in charge.
Right.
It's more about
How can we use our strengths to serve and uplift each other?
working together.
Yeah.
The team.
Exactly. And for husbands, the source talks about leading with wisdom and humility, kind of
Go.
like Jesus did, you know? It's not about being a dictator or calling all the shots. It's
Yeah.
about being willing to serve your wife
Yeah,
and put her needs above your own.
that makes a lot of sense. But what about the wife's role? I feel like the source uses some pretty strong language there too.
It does. It emphasizes the importance of wives supporting their husbands as spiritual leaders
Okay.
and creating a peaceful and nurturing home environment.
Okay, so hold on. What does that actually mean? Like I'm
Oh,
kind of lost now.
Yeah, so this is where I think it's easy to get tripped up by our modern sensibilities because
Yeah, right.
we automatically think, oh, this is about women being submissive and silent.
Right.
But that's not what the source is saying at all.
So then what is it saying?
Think of it this way. It's about recognizing that your husband also needs encouragement. and support. He needs you to believe in him, to help him grow in his faith.
It's about being a source of strength for him.
Exactly. And that's not about silencing your own voice or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about using your strengths to build him up and make him feel loved and respected.
Okay, now I'm starting to see how this fits into that whole serving each other idea we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's about being a true partner.
Yeah.
Not just in the day-to-day stuff, but in your spiritual journey as well.
Absolutely. And you know what really helps solidify that partnership?
What's that?
The Source talks about the power of prayer and worship in marriage.
So we're talking about praying together,
Yes.
studying the Bible as a couple,
Yes.
maybe even going to church together.
All of those things. Because when you do those things together, you're inviting God
Yeah.
into the center of your relationship.
It's like you're creating this bond
Yeah.
that goes way beyond just romantic love.
It's a spiritual connection
Right.
that's rooted in something much deeper.
I love that. It's like building this three-stranded cord, right?
Yeah.
You, your partner,
Yes.
and God at the center, holding it all together.
Beautiful analogy. I love that.
Yeah. But let's be real for a minute.
Okay.
No marriage is perfect.
Right.
What happens when you hit a rough patch? Like,
Right.
how does this faith-first approach help you navigate those difficult times?
Well, the Source actually addresses that head on. It acknowledges that
Well-
hurt and misunderstandings are inevitable in any relationship.
Yeah.
But what sets a Christ-centered approach apart is that forgiveness becomes a way of life.
So it's not just about saying, I'm sorry when you mess up.
Right.
It's about actively choosing to let go of the bitterness,
Yeah.
to extend grace even when you don't feel like it.
Even when it's hard.
Which is tough. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, sometimes
Yeah.
I hold on to those grudges for dear life.
So our human nature, right, to want to protect ourselves, to hold on to that hurt.
Yeah.
But the Source makes a really compelling case for forgiveness. Because choosing to forgive, even when it's hard,
Yeah.
it breaks those negative cycles.
Right.
And it opens the door for deeper intimacy.
So you're actually choosing to love,
Yes,
even when your feelings are telling you to do the opposite.
exactly. It's a powerful concept. And I think it's something we could all benefit from practicing more.
Absolutely. So we've talked about marriage being a covenant,
Yes.
the roles of husbands and wives, and the power of prayer and forgiveness.
Right.
What else does the Source have to offer? Like, where do we go from here?
So from marriage, the Source kind of shifts gears and starts talking about dating. And it uses this term,
Okay.
kingdom-minded dating, which I thought was really interesting.
What is that? I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, so basically it means like aligning your romantic choices with God's will,
Okay.
not just your feelings. So it's about taking a step back from all the
Right.
noise of the world and all the messages that we're getting
Yeah.
about what love is supposed to look like, and really like trying to figure out, okay, God, what kind of relationship would honor you? What kind of person?
Okay. Would help me become the best version of myself.
So it's not just like swiping right based on a cute photo.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because, you know, we live in a culture that
Yeah.
promotes instant gratification,
Right.
you know, casual hookups, ghosting, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And the Source really points out that that often leads to heartbreak and emptiness.
Yeah. So true.
And it's like, why are we setting ourselves up for that
Yeah.
when there's a better way?
Right. So how do we date differently then? Like, what does this kingdom-minded dating actually look like?
Well, the Source lays out some really practical steps. First and foremost,
Okay.
it emphasizes seeking God before seeking a partner.
Okay, so you're saying before you even start looking for someone,
Yes.
you need to make sure your relationship with God is solid.
It's about recognizing that you are already complete in Christ.
Okay.
You don't need someone else to fill a void in your life. And when you understand that, when you really believe that,
Right.
it changes everything about how you approach dating. Yeah, because you're not looking for someone to complete you.
Right.
You're looking for someone to share your life with.
Yes.
From a place of wholeness already.
And you're also more likely to make healthier choices, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
when you're secure in God's love,
Right.
you're not as easily swayed by like superficial things or,
Right.
red flags that you might otherwise ignore.
It's like you're dating with more discernment.
Yes.
Because you're not just desperate to find someone.
Exactly.
You're being intentional about who you let into your life.
It's about quality over quantity.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's say someone's done the inner work. Their relationship with God is strong.
Okay.
What's next? Like, how do they actually date with this kingdom mindset?
Okay, well, the Source gets pretty specific here.
Okay.
It talks about pursuing purity and honor in your relationships.
Okay, now hold on. Purity is a word that I feel like gets thrown around a lot.
Right.
And honestly, it makes some people cringe.
Yeah, I get that.
So what does the source actually mean by that?
It's about setting clear boundaries, both physically and emotionally, to protect your heart and your mind.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that intimacy is a beautiful gift from God,
Right.
but it's meant to be shared within the context of marriage.
So saving sex for marriage, like, is that really what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and I know in today's world that can sound like a radical idea,
Yeah, it does.
but honestly, there are so many good reasons for it.
Like what? Spill the tea.
Think about it. When you jump into physical intimacy too soon, it can really cloud your judgment.
Okay.
You know, it's like those hormones are raging, and it can be hard to see if you're
Yeah.
truly compatible with
We're
someone.
just blinded by lust, basically.
Exactly. But when you wait, when you choose to build a foundation of trust and respect,
Right.
emotional connection first, then when you do finally come together physically, it's so much more meaningful.
That's really beautiful, actually. I never thought of it that way. So it's not about denying yourself pleasure.
Right.
It's about choosing something better, something that will ultimately lead to more joy and fulfillment.
You got it. And this ties into the source's emphasis on dating with the intent of marriage.
Okay.
So it's not just about having fun or finding someone to fill a void.
Right.
It's about seeking a partner
Yeah.
who shares your faith,
Okay.
shares your values, someone you can actually see yourself building a life with that honors God.
So when you're dating someone, you should constantly be asking yourself,
Right.
could I see myself spending my life with this person? Do they challenge me to grow closer to God?
Exactly. And the source also suggests looking for those Christ-like character traits.
Okay.
Things like kindness, humility, generosity, integrity.
So it's about looking beyond the surface and really getting to know someone's heart.
Yes. And those are the qualities that will really matter in the long run.
Right.
Way more than just physical attraction or shared hobbies.
Okay, so how do you do that, though? Like, how do you get to know someone's heart without
Yeah.
coming across as like an interviewer grilling them on their faith?
It's a balance for sure. The source suggests asking open-ended questions
Okay.
that allow the other person to share their faith journey in a natural way, and also just observing
Right.
how they treat others, how
Yeah.
they handle conflict, how they respond to challenges.
So those everyday moments can actually reveal a lot about someone's character.
You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat
Yeah,
a waiter or a barista,
that's so true. Yeah.
or how they react when they're cut off in traffic.
Yeah. It's like a treasure hunt looking for those little nuggets of gold that show you who they really are at their core.
I love that analogy.
I'm rethinking my whole approach to dating now. But what about those times when
Right.
you really like someone, you feel that spark,
Yeah.
but something just seems off? Like maybe their values don't quite align with yours,
Right.
or you sense some red flags in their behavior. Like, how do you navigate that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. What does your gut tell you?
Honestly, my gut is screaming, run! But sometimes, the heart wants what it wants.
I get it. It's hard, especially when you feel that initial attraction.
Right. And you start thinking, maybe I can change them, or it's not that big of a deal.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there. But the source is really clear about this. It says that you shouldn't ignore those red flags.
So even if it means ending things.
And if it means being single for a while longer. And honestly, I think that's one of the bravest things you can do.
It is hard, though, especially when you see everyone else seemingly coupled up.
It's so easy to get caught up in that comparison game.
Yeah.
But the source reminds us that God's timing is perfect.
So it's about trusting God, trusting his plan for your life.
Exactly. And trusting that he has someone special in store for you. Someone who truly aligns with his will for your life.
That makes me think about how important personal growth is in all of this.
Yes. And the source really emphasizes that. It's not just about finding the right person, it's about becoming the right person.
So working on your own faith and character actually makes you a better partner.
It's like you're creating this solid foundation to build a relationship on. The stronger you are in your own faith, the more you have to offer someone else.
That's a great way to put it. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. You have to fill yourself up first. And God is the ultimate source of that love and grace. The more you connect with him, the more you have to give.
So it's not about being perfect or having it all together. It's about being on that journey of growth, always striving to become more like Christ.
Exactly. And that growth never really ends, does it?
No, it's an ongoing process. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about relationships. They can challenge us and help us grow in ways we never thought possible.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. Some of the most difficult times in our lives, the times that have really tested us, have also been the times when we've grown the most.
So those struggles actually become opportunities for growth.
Exactly. And when we go through those challenges together, as a couple, it can actually strengthen our bond and bring us closer together.
And I think that's where that whole forgiveness thing comes back in, right? Because let's be real, we're going to hurt each other. We're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely. But it's how we handle those moments that really matters. When we choose forgiveness, when we choose grace, it creates this space for healing and growth.
And for deeper intimacy.
Yes. Because when you can be vulnerable with someone, when you can admit your faults and know that you'll be met with love and acceptance, that's when true connection happens.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I'm seeing relationships in a whole new light.
Me too. And you know, one of the things that's really struck me is the reminder that we're not in this alone. We have God to guide us, to strengthen us, and to help us build relationships that honor Him.
That's so encouraging. It's like no matter what we're facing in our relationships, whether it's the excitement of new love or the challenges of a long-term commitment, we can always turn to God for help.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this whole faith-based approach to relationships so powerful. It's not about following a set of rules. It's about inviting God into the center of our lives and our relationships and allowing Him to lead us to the love and fulfillment we desire.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought-provoking question that we can leave our listeners with?
Well, how might shifting your perspective to view relationships through the lens of faith impact your current or future connections? What would it look like to prioritize your relationship with God? What would it look like to date with intention, seeking a partner who shares your values and inspires you to grow closer to Christ? I challenge you to explore these questions and see how putting faith at the center might transform your approach to love and relationships.
That's a powerful question, and I think it's a perfect place to end our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep loving.